Hi there, this is Kenpojoe Rebelo and welcome to our series entitled Elaborating Upon Kenpo. In this particular series we're going to be going over the required self-defense techniques for the rank of yellow belt in Ed Parker's American Kenpo Karate. In our studio we call these the Lucky 13, and in reality the original 10 required self-defense techniques were as follows: delayed sword, aggressive twins, sword of destruction, deflecting hammer, spreading branch, grasp of death, checking the storm, mace of aggression, attacking mace, and intellectual departure. Now, the second technique, aggressive twins, was replaced by alternating maces. The fifth technique, spreading branch, was replaced by captured twigs. And intellectual departure, the 10th technique, that was replaced by sword and hammer. Now, what we're going to do in today's section, we're going to be working on technique number 2, alternating maces, which was the replacement to the original technique, aggressive twins. Now later on, we're going to explain to you why those 3 techniques were replaced. But right now, we're focusing on this particular technique. And the reason I am is because I was looking on a Facebook page concerning Kenpo, and one particular person did alternating maces, and I simply said I didn't like the way they did it, and the way they kind of explained it I wasn't too hot about either. Nothing against them personally, but I really wanted to, again, elaborate upon Kenpo and elaborate upon this given technique. So that being said, let's go to work. The technique is called alternating maces, and the basic premise, this is used against, first of all, the attack is a front 2-hand push. And I'm going to elaborate upon that. In the ideal phase, it's used against the front 2-hand push with the person's right foot forward. Now again, what happens when a person's left foot is forward? Well, we'll go into that in a little bit. But first of all, we want to go over the base technique. When we look at alternating maces, it alternates a lot more than maces. Again, maces are our fists. Again, alternating one fist then the other. But it's alternating a lot more than that. And that's what we want to talk about today. Let's go over the base technique. Back up a little bit. From a natural stance, you step back with your left foot into a right neutral bow, drawing your left hand to chamber as you execute a right inward, downward, horizontal forearm. You then convert your hand to an open-handed check as you pivot to a right forward bow with your left foot, executing a left vertical thrust punch to your opponent's solar plexus. You then convert your left hand into a positional check upon your opponent's forearms as you pivot back to a right neutral bow, executing a right snapping outward back knuckle. From a side view, again, step back in chamber, downward horizontal forearm, check, pivot punch, check, snapping back knuckle. Now, let's address a couple of things right off the bat. There are some people that will watch this video and say, no, it's an inward block. I've had people say that. I've had people rationalize it. Again, the original way I learned the technique was a downward horizontal forearm. It can be done with an inward block, but the key ingredient is it's not checking off both of the person's hands. The key ingredient when people say, well, it breaks a Kenpo law. It really doesn't. Okay? The law that you refer to is closing the opponent's center line. Again, we're addressing opponents both of their arms. So let's elaborate upon this a little bit, shall we? First of all, alternating. And at this point, I'm going to call out my partner in crime, as it were. Sir, come on up. This is Mr. Dennis Blackwell, and Mr. Blackwell is, and again, Cat. Mr. Blackwell is a longtime martial artist in Kung Fu, in Chin Na, in 5-animal style Kung Fu, in Chuan Fa, which is the Chinese pronunciation of Kenpo. And we're going to go over a little bit into this technique. So, alternating. What are we alternating? A lot more than our maces. Again, from here, salute. Cat. Guy does other systems, so again, step to that, catch that with cat, and that. Cool. All right, now what we're going to do here, I'm going to back up a little bit. My opponent's going to step back with his right foot in a left fighting stance. Move. He's going to step through with a front two-hand push with his right hand forward. Move. Right foot forward, I should say. That. Stepping through and pushing. Up, again, and push. Move. Good. Up. Push. Move. Right. That's the key. You want to get your student accustomed to making contact with you for the course of this given technique. And move forward just a little bit, sir. Come on up. There we go. So now, the first thing I want to do, and Mr. Parker elaborated this into Infinite Insights in Kenpo when he has pictures of the universal pattern in Volume 1. I believe it's Volume 1 or Volume 2. And again, I should know the exact page for this segment. But the key ingredient, he talks about 1/4 versus 3/4 of a circle. We're going to elaborate upon that in this given technique. If I use the concept of 1/4 versus 3/4, it talks about the amount of time it takes me to get to a given point from my point of origin. From point of origin to point of impact. In this case, if both my hands are down and Dennis steps through with the front two-hand push, I bring my hands up 1/4, 2/4, 3/4 of a circle down to the downward horizontal forearm across both of his limbs. I'm checking off both my opponent's hands. As I do so, this is one of the 3 instances in the course of any given Kenpo technique where I can safely chamber my other hand. Now, there are many people who say, oh, there's no need to chamber, you shouldn't have to chamber. We chamber in American Kenpo for good reason, for proper travel. In this instance, because I'm blocking both of my opponent's arms, I now have the freedom of movement to chamber my other limb. Now, from here, I open my hand to a positional check. And here's the rule. Block, then check. Again, block, then check. From here, I then pivot to a forward bow, executing a left vertical thrust punch to my opponent's solar plexus, stopping their forward momentum. At this point, I take my left hand and I bring it down to a downward horizontal check as I pivot back to my neutral bow, executing a right snapping outward back knuckle to my opponent's right temple. Up. Now, if I use the concept of 1/4 versus 3/4, then I bring my hands up to the passive position. Both my hands are up. He comes in with the push. Boom. Now again, another Kenpo law, keep your hands above your opponent's hands. So by utilizing the passive position or the I don't want to fight stance, I'm able to drop my hand down faster. But again, both techniques are correct because they teach you 3/4 of a circle with hands down as opposed to 1/4 of a circle with hands up. Again, chambering my hand, checking, pivoting forward bow, check, snapping back knuckle. Now, for a moment, let's look at what we're alternating. Thank you, sir. I'll call you back momentarily. First thing I'm alternating are stances. We have several major categories, 7 to be specific. Again, stances, blocks, parries, punches, strikes, finger techniques, and, kicks and foot maneuvers. 8. All right, every once in a while I have a brain cramp. But again, stances, blocks, parries, punches, strikes, finger techniques, kicks, and maneuvers. These are foot maneuvers or body maneuvers, but maneuvers. Now, in this case, let's see what we're alternating. Well, from here, we're alternating stances. Neutral bow, forward bow, neutral bow. And it also introduces us to in-play stance changes. Again, from here, my front foot stays on a 45-degree angle. It's only my back foot that's going to pivot. Turning to a forward bow, and back to a neutral bow. Mr. Parker wants to elaborate talking about, referring to Elvis, and how Elvis would pivot his hips. And again, torquing, moving back and forth. And again, tongues of your belt swinging back and forth from the rotational torque. Now, again from here, that's the key. What else are we alternating? Well, we're alternating methods of execution with our offensive weaponry. What do I mean? Well, again from here, I step back, I execute a left vertical thrusting punch. So, I open up my hand in check, my left hand comes straight out, hitting with the front of my 2 knuckles. I then check, pivoting, and striking with the back of my 2 knuckles in a strike. So, we also alternate limbs. Left, right. If you notice, however, in both instances, what does remain the same with each one of our limbs is that our hands stay in a vertical position, whether we're utilizing the punch or the strike. So we're teaching you different methods of execution while using the same position for your fist alignment. Left, vertical, thrust. We're alternating methods of execution. Now there are several major methods of execution. Thrusting, snapping, roundhousing, hooking, slicing, clawing, and hammering. People say, well, what about chopping? Chopping is nothing more than hammering with an open hand. And that's another important phrase that Mr. Parker would use. Blank is nothing more than blank. And fill in the blanks according to the scenario in regards to American Kenpo. Now, from here, again, left vertical thrust. Thrusting in a straight line, checking, snapping, or in this case, utilizing a circular path of motion. Two major paths of motion, linear and circular. Alternating the path of motion. So again, we see we're alternating a lot more than our maces. And we're also alternating a lot in relationship to our blocking checks too. Because we step back with a closed fist with our right hand and block, then convert it to an open hand check, we then strike, and then use an open hand check to drop as we strike with our right limb. So now we're alternating blocks versus parries or checks. So again, blocking, then checking from that point, and then dropping and checking as we strike. So there's a lot going on in alternating maces. Stances, blocks and parries, punches and strikes, no finger techniques, no kicks, but we're learning about foot maneuvers, in-place stance changes. That's the key. That's a lot going on, isn't it? So, sir, come on up again. From this point, with alternating maces, sir, got the cat stance that time. Yay. Okay. From this position, we're going to work on sequential flow. And sequential flow enables us to move in a flowing action in a series of movements. So, if we go to alternating maces, one of the cool things about alternating maces is the following. Sir, move forward. All right, move up a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so again, you're going to come in with front 2-hand push. Move. 1, 2, 3. The beauty of this is, if he moves back from those first 2 strikes, the punch, and then the strike, well, guess what? A simple step, drag, foot maneuver, and I can do this again and again. For you Canadians, again. And that's the key. That's the beauty of the movement. So, understanding that element of sequential flow enables me to strike an opponent in a series of actions, in a continuous pattern, in a flowing series of motions, again and again and again. And this is one of the important features that really dictates and mandates what constitutes Kenpo, and what shows, for lack of a better term, to many people, the speed of Kenpo. A lot of people talk about that, how fast we move. We don't move just fast because we're fast, we move fast because of the nature of the way the system is designed. And that really is the beauty of Kenpo. Well, that being said, I hope that was of some guide and assistance to you in having a greater understanding in one of our basic required self-defense techniques. Again, technique number 2, requirements for yellow belt, alternating maces used against the front 2-hand push. So with the assistance of Seafood Dennis Blackwell, and again we call him Seafood because of the Kung Fu training that he does as well. This is Joseph Rebelo, Kenpojoe. I hope you got something out of today's segment. And again, for those of you who are Kenpo practitioners or in the process of learning the art of Kenpo, or were interested in learning the art of Kenpo, I hope you got something out of today's lesson. Until next time, keep training.